So I went on a rant the other day because working with brands and doing sponsorships here on my channel is amazing, but sometimes very, very freaking frustrating. So I went on a rant on Instagram and I was like complaining about things. Y'all, when I tell you that working with sponsors is one of the most frustrating things in the world, I ain't playing. I do not know how people make this their most of their income source. Because I end up firing 50% of the sponsors I work with. I end up sending money back to sponsors regularly. And it really led me to some awesome conversations with you guys because there were so many people in my DMs who were like, listen, I would just like to have a brand want to work with me that I could be frustrated with. So how do you even get brand deals? And what do you do to prevent these things you're ranting about? All the things flooding into my DMs, and it made me realize that I needed to do a video where we really pull back the curtain on brand deals and sponsorships and how to get them and how you need to work with those brands and all the things you need in place to work with brands and get sponsorship deals. Even if you're a teeny tiny little content creator. See, brands totally know that this is the future, but I think the industry is a little weird right now. I have been creating content on the internet for a very long time at this point. 2015, I started a podcast, I was blogging, I had a Facebook group, and the interesting part is that I have actually worked with brands since that time. In my first podcast, we had brand sponsors who sponsored our podcast. And so I have the knowledge of what it was like to work with podcast sponsors versus what it's like to work with sponsors for my Instagram or my YouTube channel. And let me tell you, it's very different. And I think the difference is that podcast sponsorships were just created and this is how they were done. And that's it. And so when brands go to sponsor podcasts, they already know the ins and the outs. With sponsoring creators on platforms like TikTok and YouTube, it's really a new emerging industry for the creator and the brands. And we have a lot of creators that, don't really look at their content as a business and so don't structure it that way and don't read contracts and don't do things in a businessy way. So that makes the brands think that everybody's like that. I think it's kind of a whole mess, but I do think it'll straighten out and I think it's worth riding a little bit of the bumpy road, like Mater on Cars when he goes down the road and he's like, blah, 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 because Lightning McQueen paved it so fast. That's a little bit what this is like right now. But I think it's worth it. And I want you to be super equipped to work with brands if that's something you want to do. Oh, by the way, hi, I'm Jessica Stansberry. If you're new here, hi, what's up? Hello, howdy, all the things. This channel is literally designed to help content creators and entrepreneurs make more money from their content. So if that sounds like something you're interested in, make sure you hit subscribe below. Okay, so quick little disclaimer. Anybody can work with brands and get brand deals and sponsorships. I do not care how small your account is or how small your channel is or how few subscribers or how many subscribers you have or how many followers you have on TikTok. Small and large accounts alike can get brand deals and sponsorships. Obviously, larger accounts are going to be able to charge more for that than smaller accounts can, but you can start getting brand deals and sponsorships pretty early on in the content creation game. In fact, there are some brands who want to work with micro influencers. They want to work with influencers who have less of the vanity metric because they understand that one, they'll be able to allocate more of their budget to more creators instead of just paying a large percentage of their budget to a large creator. But two, when content creators are smaller, their community is way more tighter knit. So their community is going to be hanging on their every word, and brands know this, or there's some brands that know this. Not all of them do, but there are some that do. Doesn't matter how small or big you are, you can definitely work with brands. So what do you do first? What do you need first? If you're like, yes, girl, yes, Jessica, I would really like to work with brands and sponsors. What is the first step? The first step is to set your rates and develop a media kit that you can actually show to brands so they can know how much you charge. So this has to come first, because if you go out seeking brands out, or if a brand comes to you and you don't have this in place, it's gonna be really hard to continue that conversation. You need to see how much you want to charge, and then you need to put that information together in a media kit. So a media kit is usually a 4 or 5 page PDF that can be sent to brands that have information about you and your content and your ideal audience and your numbers, the vanity metrics behind everything, and your rates. So on my media kit on the front page, there is information about myself, what I'm looking to do with my content, and then we have a page about all of our numbers, so how many podcast downloads and YouTube subscribers and Instagram followers and whatever else is all laid out on a page. And then we have some packages outlined too. So we have packages for Instagram, for YouTube, for the podcast, which is currently on a hiatus, but we still have it in there, and different things like that. And along with our rates, we also have information about what that package looks like. So I'm going to talk in the next step about this a little bit, but you really have to know how you want to create content that is both going to best serve your audience and best serve the brand. So I put that straight in my media kit so that from the jump, they understand what they're getting with a YouTube sponsorship or a podcast sponsorship or whatever. I guarantee I know your next question, but Jessica, how much do I charge? That's not a black and white answer. There's a lot of gray that goes into how much we should be charging. There are tools like Social Blue Book that will let you plug in your information and they will tell you what they think you should charge. But I have found that those are generally, historically, way too low, way lower than they need to be. And you also know your value and your audience better than a software can like go in and look at it from a bird's eye view. So yes, I might only have 18,000 followers on Instagram, but I know that my Instagram audience is super engaged in my stories and on my posts. Whereas if somebody has 100,000 followers on Instagram, they might not even have the same engagement that I have. So you have to know your audience. And what I would suggest is that you just start somewhere. You just start with a price that feels right to you, and then you can negotiate that down or up when brands come to you. So my channel last year, when I first started taking sponsorship deals, was a little bit on the like dying side. It was not doing well. It was on life support. And I really wanted to start testing out sponsorships and brand deals and all the things, but I didn't feel like I could charge what maybe someone else with my same subscriber number could charge, because I was looking at these other channels who had 100,000 subscribers and I had 100,000 subscribers, and my channel, like the amount of views I got per video was pretty low in relation to what they were getting. I actually took it down a little bit during that time to get some brand deals and get my feet wet. And then I took it back up, and then we're getting ready to take it back up again. The prices that you saw in the media kit as I was talking about that are our current starting prices, but that doesn't mean that that's always the price that we charge. It's a very weird industry where the prices are not set, because the brands are likely going to try and negotiate with you. And if you get approached from a brand and they present an offer, you should try and negotiate with them. So pricing is very hard, and it's gonna be different for every single platform too, which is really hard for me as like an educator to be like, oh, you should totally charge this much. But I would take into account the amount of work it takes you to put that sponsored spot together, the engagement on your platform, and then obviously the numbers that the sponsor is looking at, which is like your followers or your subscriber numbers. So a YouTube sponsorship for me is gonna be much more. One, because I have a much bigger following over here, but two, because it takes me much more work to put together a YouTube video than it does for me to put together an Instagram reel, right? Like those two things require different levels of work. So while I know that that's your next question, I don't have a solid answer, but I would just start putting it out there and see what brands come back with. And that can help you kind of get started. If brands are just immediately like, oh yeah, we'll do that. Oh yeah, we'll do that. Yes, then you need to raise your prices. But if they're constantly like, that's too much for us, that's too much for us, that's a little too much, or this, or we see this or that thing, then it might be a sign to kind of lower them for a little bit until you can grow your following a bit more. So once you have your rate set and your media kit done, the next thing you need to do is really determine what you will and won't do and line that up in a way that can be put in a contract. Now, contracting is really weird with brands, I think, because sometimes you're gonna have two contracts, like their contract and your contract. Sometimes you're the one creating the contract, sometimes they're the one creating the contract. But either way, there are times when you're going to need to put your own stipulations and terms into a brand's contract and vice versa. So you need to kind of figure out what those are. That being said, sometimes I think that this comes with doing it. And what irritates me, or what is something that I'm like, oh my gosh, that is going in the contract, or the reason I go on a rant on Instagram, may not irritate you. It may be something you're totally fine with. So it kind of just depends, but there's a few categories I'd want you to look at to understand what you will and won't do and what you might need to put in a contract. First is revisions. What I have found is that if I'm gonna sit here and film a video for a brand, and I'm gonna create the video kind of around what their thing is dealing with and then integrate them into my video, and then I send it to the brand and they want 1,000,000 revisions, it is not worth my time at that point to even do that brand deal. So with YouTube sponsorships, I am way less tolerant of revisions than I am with other types of sponsorships because the content is much harder to recreate or refilm or redo. So you really want to think through like how many revisions these brands will get on your content, how they will even be able to approve it or request revisions. So for me, they're not allowed to approve my video. Like they're not allowed to have anything wrong with my video itself. They're only critiquing and approving the ad spot in the video. So that is a boundary that I set when I realized that this was a problem. For most people, you're gonna start working with brands, run into problems, put it in the contract. Work with brands, run into problems, put it in the contract. But revisions and how they approve your content are two of the biggest things that I would kind of start with when you're trying to think of what you will do and what you won't do. For instance, I had a brand not long ago at all who in their contract, they said that they were going to approve the script but then would not make changes to the video itself. And so we went back and forth with them on the script. They approved the script, everything was fine. But then when the video was done, even though I read the script word for word, they wanted revisions. And I was like, no, not doing it. So you really have to think through what this looks like. Now, when I was on my rant the other day on Instagram, my friend Millie from It's Modern Millie, she messaged me and she's like, girl, you need to put a fee in your contract for revisions or changes to the contract after a certain point. So that if a brand is like, we're not going to, we're gonna approve your script, and then you go and you film the ad spot and they want to do something different with that, even though they didn't say it in the script, I can then charge them for this other revision. And it's gonna deter them from wanting to make it, but it's also going to make it worth my while if I have to. So I thought that was a great idea. I wanted to shout her out and give her credit for that one. I've also had brands kind of change up the contract in the middle too. They'll be like, oh, we wanna do 4 videos and this is the outline we want you to follow, or these are the bullet points we want you to hit. And then halfway through that, they'll be like, oh, we decided we want you to do this, or we want you to do that, or we want you to, take this other path with your advertising, which could mess up my content. So having that in the contract, that there's a fee if they do that, or that that's not allowed, is really important to me. The other 2 things I want you to think about when coming up with how you'll work with brands and putting it in the contract and all the things are the payment, obviously. How are they going to pay you? When is it okay that they pay you? When do you want to contractually obligate them to pay you? And make sure that that is written somewhere in your contracts in the back and forth with the brand. That way they can't go back on that or not pay you for something. So I have found that some brands will pay up front and then, I deliver the content, and then some brands will want to pay, within 30 days of that content going live. And honestly, I'm fine with either. So you really just want to think through and talk through that with the brand in the negotiation process. Oh, and the last thing you want to think about and put in the contract and in your media kit, which is what I said a minute ago I would get back to here, is how your content will be structured around that brand. There are some people here on YouTube who will do full brand sponsorship videos. I'm just looking around my desk. I have a loopy phone case. They do not sponsor me, but let's say they reached out and they were like, we would love to sponsor you. We want you to do a whole video about our loopy case. So I'm getting on YouTube and I'm like, oh, I love my loopy case. And it has the thing and it protects my phone and blah, 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 blah. And that's all the video is about. I will not do that. My relationship with y'all is way too important for me to put out a video all the time or even once that's all about just a brand, because that's not why you're here. You're here to learn the things. And if I have a sponsor, great, but you're here to learn the things from me and I'm here to help you with those things. Keeping that trust with y'all is way too important for me to do those types of videos and to really give away any of my content on those types of videos. My YouTube sponsorships, it is laid out in my media kit that they are integrated mentions within a video that hopefully relates to that topic, but that sometimes they are ad spots in a video where maybe it doesn't relate at all. I try not to do that, but sometimes with a brand who I'm working with like consistently, sometimes the video doesn't line up in the most amazing way and they are an ad spot in a video. But for the most part, my videos really line up with the brand and what their brand does. But either way, I only work with brands who want to get in front of my specific audience of content creators and entrepreneurs. So it should be good. You really want to think about your content. Are you okay with doing a dedicated post on Instagram? Are you okay with doing a dedicated video? Do you want them to be ad spots in videos and not have to correlate? Do you want them to be correlated ad spots in a correlated video? Do you want them to be a carousel post on Instagram? You really want to think through what is most ideal for you based on the relationship you have with your audience already and how you want to like preserve that. And all that's left now is to find the brands. And that's probably the hardest part of the puzzle, honestly, especially when you're a small creator. It can be really hard to be like, oh, I just like found a brand who wanted to pay me. And I'm gonna break down 3 main ways you can find brands to work with so that hopefully it's not super hard. And the first one we're gonna talk about is not one I can really give you strategy for, but it's one that will happen eventually. And that is that the brands just come to you. At a certain point in your content creation journey, brands are gonna start noticing you and coming to you. And there's a couple ways you can actually aid in that, which I said I couldn't really strategically tell you how to do this, but I do have a few things that would help. The biggest thing that's gonna help getting brands come to you and like getting brands to notice you is to grow your platform. You know, do the things you're doing to grow the platform and get bigger on the platform, because then the brands will have more likelihood to notice you. But the other thing would be if there are brands you already want to work with, if there's brands that you already know that like you would love to have them like coming to you to work with you, you can do content about them or featuring them or talking about them without being paid. And that's gonna show them what an asset you could be to their brand, and they're gonna wanna pay you. This has happened to me a bajillion times. I'll do a piece of content about a software or a thing, or not even about that thing, but using that thing, and I mention it. And then in, you know, a few minutes or so, the brand is like, hey, we saw Jessica's video on such and such. We'd love to sponsor her. Is that a thing? And we're like, yes, it is. Here's the charge, you know? So brands will start coming to you eventually, but as you grow your platform, start to think about the brands you want to work with and see if you can do some content now, featuring them, tagging them, making sure that it's getting in front of their eyeballs so that they know you exist and they can keep an eye on you. Now, the second way to find brands is through like an influencer brand matching site. YouTube actually has their own, I think it's called Brand Connect, where you can like apply to be part of Brand Connect and then brands can match with you. But there's also tons of third-party ones. The one that I hear talked about most right now is called Aspire IQ. And I joined their waitlist months ago and still have yet to be approved. And there were a couple of others that I found in doing some research who also had a waitlist. So this may not be your best bet in getting brand deals, but what happens within these is that brands will go out and be like, hey, we need 25 creators to do X, Y, and Z for us. And then the creator goes in and they're like, oh, that looks like a good fit for me. I'm going to apply. And then they take it from there and figure out rates and all the things. The other side of that would be that a brand is looking for a specific type of creator and the creators have profiles in this platform that they see and they are like, oh, we'd like to work with you, and then they connect in that way. So these platforms can be really great if you can get yourself approved for one, and or if you can find one that is specifically having brands that you even want to work with. So there's a few out there that I could totally work with, but they don't really have the types of brands that I know are gonna wanna sponsor me. I talk to entrepreneurs and content creators, not like the Gen Pop, you know, not the general consumer. So there's a different kind of brand who wants to sponsor my videos than like, let's say a lifestyle blogger or something like that. And then the third way to find these brands, and this is probably my favorite and the one I would recommend most, is to reach out to them, like literally. Cold pitch them. Make a list of the brands that you already know and love and want to work with and reach out to them directly. Now, in some cases, this can be easier said than done because it can be hard to find the right person at the company you're trying to get in touch with. But in cold pitching, you want to really keep in mind how you are going to benefit them, how your audience or the people who need to see their thing, how you can benefit their product, not all about you and your subscribers and your followers, okay? And then secondarily to that, if you have content that has already featured their product or talked about their product, you could include that in a cold pitch so they could see a real example of what this would look like for you. So as far as like reaching out to them directly, you really need to find the right person. And this can be really hard. I'll be honest. It can be really hard to find like the brand manager at Sony or, you know, the marketing manager or like whatever they're calling themselves at that company. But what I would suggest is that you go on LinkedIn and you find the people that have the title you're looking for the company you're wanting to reach out to. If they're sharing their contact information on LinkedIn, do that. If not, maybe try DMing them on LinkedIn and see if they'll answer. And then sometimes it's even as easy as using a tool that I love called hunter.io. So it's got a little fox logo as the thing, but it's a Chrome extension. And basically you just install it in Chrome. And when you go to any website, you can click that button and it will find the emails associated with that website and will oftentimes tell you the titles of the people who have the emails. So let's say I did want to work with Sony. If I go to Sony's website and I pull up hunter.io, it's going to give me a bunch of email addresses and even let me pick categories. So like, do I want somebody in the communication department? Do I want somebody in engineering or marketing or management? I can then click those categories and it will pull up the people that fit in those categories. Now, not always are you going to have that option, but you could doubly use LinkedIn to find the person and their name and hunter.io to find their email address. So these are really great tools to find the right person to pitch yourself to when you're reaching out to a brand directly. Okay, so if you've made it this far in the video, I feel certain that you want to be working with brands, and I would love to hear any other questions that you have about brand deals and sponsorships on any platform that you want to talk about in the comments below. But hopefully this showed you a really good like bird's eye view of what you need in place and what this process looks like so that you can get started. I really viewed brand deals and brand sponsorships as kind of a negative thing for a long time here on my channel because that's not the point of my channel. The point of my channel is to attract and help content creators and entrepreneurs make a business and make more money. But it's really leaving money on the table. Like there are brands out there that have millions of dollars to spend on brand deals and sponsorships. You just have to go out and find them. Okay. I think that's gonna put a lid on today's video. Like I said before, if you're like, you know what, brands and sponsorship deals are not really how I wanna make money, or I'm not there yet, but I wanna make money from my content, I do have a video that was posted last week that I will make sure is popping across the screen and is linked below that you can go watch. That is 5 different ways to make $10,000 a month as a content creator. So hopefully that can help you get pointed in another direction if brand deals and sponsorships maybe isn't it right now. And until next time, bye y'all.